live for local.
And it's another beautiful Sunday afternoon. Welcome to It's Family Time. Let's talk. My name is Ria Rupchansing and I will be your host for the duration of the series. And today we will be discussing self-esteem and self-worth as well as emotional intelligence. And the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services made its mandate to prioritize the welfare of all children, youth and families. And by this, the ministry has affirmed its dedication to ensuring access to a range of programs and services aimed at fostering the well-being and care of all members of society. For more information, these services can be found on the ministry's website, www.social.gov.tt. And joining me for today's discussion is Ovida Franklin, who is an accomplished social worker and counselor with a diverse range of qualifications and training. Ms. Franklin started her educational journey by earning a bachelor's degree in social sciences, majoring in social work. Her educational background, coupled with training in trauma-focused behavioral therapy, grief counseling, adolescent drug and substance abuse, among other things. And also joining our panel is Dr. Sherilyn Budram, who holds a PhD in social work and is currently serving as lecturer and coordinator of the social work program UWI St. Augustine. She is actively involved in conducting workshops on parenting and co-parenting and conducting research on parenting challenges in today's world. Her professional experiences include working with marginalized youth, families and people who have experienced loss following disasters. Now, before we get to the discussions, viewers at home, remember you can send your questions via our TTT Live online Facebook page, and you can also give us a call at 622-4010. Stay with us because after the break, we jump right into the topics.
Are you on board yet? Don't line up. Sign up and enjoy the convenience of the direct deposit system from the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. Yes, convenience is at your fingertips when you sign up to receive your disability assistance and public assistance grants and senior citizens pension directly from your bank account. No need to worry. Your money is safe and free from fraud and theft. So avoid lining up and try signing up. Log on to www.social.gov.tt or visit your local board office for more details and sign up today. Remember, direct deposit. It's fast, it's easy, and it's safe. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. Helping, empowering, transforming lives.
Welcome back to It's Family Time. Let's talk. Today, as I mentioned, we are discussing emotional intelligence as well as self-esteem and self-worth. And this afternoon, I do have with me, as I mentioned, Ovida Franklin, who is a social worker and counselor, as well as we welcome back Dr. Sherilyn Boodram, a lecturer at UWI, who's also the coordinator of the social work program at the University of the West Indies and St. Augustine campus. So welcome back. It's a pleasure to have you back.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
And you did such a wonderful job last time. I'm anxious to get back into the discussion with you when we actually talk about self-worth and self-esteem and that type of thing. But before we do just that, emotional intelligence. Now, I think this is something that, you know, it's been around, but maybe not the terminology that's been put to it, you know, emotional intelligence, what is it? But it's there. It's always been there. It's always something that we should have been practicing. But now we've got this new term, and you know, there are different courses, there are different this, all kinds of different things happening around emotional intelligence to help people become emotionally intelligent. But what exactly is emotional intelligence? Ovida Franklin, tell us, what is emotional intelligence?
Yes, so emotional intelligence really is a skill of being able to manage and control as well as communicate your own emotions, right? And as well as being able to manage and control that of others. So have you ever heard person say, or have you ever experienced, you just had a conversation with someone and they left you thinking or feeling, did they really say that?
Oh, yes, all the time.
Yeah, and it's not really that it was hard for you to understand what was said, but at that time, the emotion didn't fit the moment or the circumstances that you would have experienced that time. So really and truly, a lot of times when it comes to emotional intelligence, persons aren't aware of how to respond to person when they are having their own situation, when they're going through their own situation and trying to express or to communicate their own emotions, right? So when we struggle to do that, it's that we ourselves are struggling to manage, control, and to communicate our own feelings or emotions.
So what you're saying is that with respect to emotional intelligence, it actually starts with the individual.
It starts with the individual. Being self-aware is so important also, right? So as parents, it's important that we model how we manage, control, and express our emotions because we are teaching our children how to do this. One of the challenges today in society is that we have a lot of persons don't know how to communicate their emotions. They don't know how to control their emotions, and most of the time that is because they too weren't taught that as children. I mean, I grew up in the era where expressing your emotions wasn't something that was encouraged. Right? I mean, there were times when, as a child, you cry too long, you were being beaten for that.
Yeah. Stop crying,
right?
What you crying for?
Exactly, right? So emotional intelligence really starts with us as individuals, being able to manage, control, and communicate our emotions, and then we teach that to our children.
Now, how, because you said it starts with the individual, it starts with the parent. So how can one promote emotional intelligence in a child, especially since it starts with the adult, with the individual, with the mother, the father? How can we then promote that or pass that on to the child and have the child learn that?
So first of all, that is very important, is modeling your way of managing, controlling, and communicating your emotions. And then secondly, is creating that environment where the child feels safe enough so that they too can express their emotions. And also we teaching our children how to manage their emotions. So it's a variety of steps that can be taken in how we teach children to manage their emotions. But first, as I would always tell parents, remember, children are always looking at us, right? So it's not only what you say, but what you do also, right? So those are just some of the steps. And as we go along, Many will
discuss some
be,
more.
yes.
Yeah, because there are many more that
Yes.
the
Yes.
individual, the parent has to manage
Yes,
and demonstrate to this child
Correct.
so that they can also learn it.
Correct.
Dr. Charlan Budram, tell me, how is this emotional intelligence now related to self-esteem and self-worth in the child?
I think it's, emotional intelligence is directly connected to the self-esteem and self-worth of an individual. When we talk about self-worth, we talk about an individual's awareness of themselves and their value and their ability to gain respect, or how much they feel they can demand respect. Self-esteem is very connected to that. Self-esteem is our feeling of confidence in doing a particular thing. So whereas self-worth is something that is intrinsic and your belief and your value and your worth, self-esteem is an outward manifestation of that sometimes. It is our feeling that we are confident in doing something, and it is also dependent on our mood sometimes. Very situational, because we may have high self-esteem for one particular task or in one environment, but that may not be so for another environment. Those are very much connected with emotional intelligence, because emotional intelligence is therefore an outward manifestation of our esteem and our worth. And a lot of times when we are having issues around having healthy self-worth and self-esteem, it can manifest in an outburst, And so while we want the individual to develop their emotional intelligence, we need to understand that there are some underlying issues as well that we need to work on in the individual to be able to draw that kind of reaction and manage emotions in a healthy way.
And the good thing is that we actually took to the streets, it's Family Time, Let's Talk, I actually took to the streets of Port of Spain to get the public's view on how we boost the self-esteem of our young ones. So here are some of the comments made by both men and women.
I boost my children's self-esteem from giving them good compliments to have a better day and don't let negative thoughts get to them.
Well, I boost my nephew's self-esteem by always being there for him, and try not to make him, stray, like other train and things, to peer pressure and things. So I just talk to him with all them sort of things, how to deal with other train like himself and things, when it comes to peer pressure and certain things. So he does always be good. Any little thing, he just be free to come and talk to me with anything,
So I try to do everything to make her feel welcome in this place, make them know they are worthwhile living here.
I boost my grandchildren's self-esteem by ensuring I hug them and letting them know that I love them, and if there is anything they need, they could always come to Grandma. I pick them up when they do well in tests, and if they don't do so well, tell them they could do better, just try a little harder.
Well, I would say communication is the foundation of any business management, any business transaction, or any relationship. Anything you're doing, you have to communicate. But if me know what you like, and you know what I like, it ain't going to work.
For the bigger ones, I would always encourage them to follow their passion and show them, kind of mentor them and give them that advice and let them know that anything that they want to achieve is definitely possible. And by setting a good example for them, I try to do that all the time and just to be there for them. And telling them that I love you. That is a word that, a couple of words that growing up, a lot of parents never really used to say back in the day because you find it too mushy. But now, you gotta let your kids know I love you, let your nieces and your nephews know I love you and you're doing well and boost up their morale.
Well, I actually love the comments that we got there with building self-esteem. Communication, was one of the most underlying things. We need to communicate with our children. We need to communicate with each other. We need to show love to each other. And we're going to be discussing more on those lines. Along those lines, we're going to learn some more about emotional intelligence, how it can help adjust, fit, boost our self-esteem and our self-worth. So stay with us because we're coming back with that after the break.
National Family Services Division of the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services extends its support and commitment to individuals, families, and households. These support services include counseling and psychosocial support, workshops and webinars, and sensitization sessions under the parenting unit, support to grandparents raising their grandchildren under the grandparenting program. Support is offered anonymously and free of charge. For more information, please call the National Family Services Division at 623-2608, extension 6701 to 6711. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. Helping, empowering, transforming lives.
Welcome back. It's Family Time. Let's talk. And that's exactly what we are doing this afternoon. Remember, you can send us your questions via TTT Live Online or Facebook page. And you can also call us at 622-4010. And we are talking emotional intelligence, self-esteem, and self-worth. And the question that was put on our Facebook page was exactly the type of question that I was going to ask Ms. Ovida Franklin. And it's basically from our Facebook page: how can persons recognize their own biases? That's exactly their own biases in order to develop proper emotional intelligence. And that's exactly what I was, asking you earlier on.
Yes.
Because it's a difficult thing to do. How do you recognize that I am angry and I am this and I am showing this? How?
Again, self-awareness is so important. Recognizing your triggers. What triggers you, right? What elicits an emotional response that impacts your thoughts and your behaviors, right? Once you recognize that, right, and once you are aware of that, then you are in a position to better understand, right, individuals also, that they too might have triggers, might not be similar to yours, right, but they too may have triggers that can elicit an emotional response that impact their thoughts as well as their behaviors. So self-awareness is important, right? And when that comes in, it elicits empathy. So you're in a position where you're able to, because you have developed the skill of emotional intelligence, you are able now to put yourself in the other person's shoes, right? Of how they too are going to be impacted by their emotions through their thoughts and through their behaviors. So those two things are very important, right? Being aware of yourself, know what triggers you have.
But I totally understand what you're saying, because you need to be aware, you need to know what triggers you, what makes you fly into a rage, to anger, what makes you answer a certain way, what makes you shy away from things, various things like that. But how do you get an individual to understand or recognize that these things are actually happening to them so that they can be aware? Because I think sometimes it's just out there. You can't touch it. So you don't even realize that you're doing it and that you're affecting someone in a certain way. So how do you get the individual themselves to recognize, listen, this is what, this is what you're doing, and your behavior, and you need to take a look at yourself if you want to pass on good emotional intelligence to your children. How do you do that?
Lots of the times what we do is to dismiss We have been in the habit of dismissing our own emotions and feelings because sometimes it's so overwhelming and sometimes the emotions can be a bit difficult and we don't want to go there, right? So we just dismiss it, we put it aside. And what you find happening is that we do the exact same thing to persons around. We dismiss their emotions, we downplay their emotions, and so forth. But until you have developed the skill, right? Yes, you have to develop the skill until you have developed the skill of emotional intelligence, which is understanding, being able to manage, control, and effectively communicate your feeling. It will be difficult for you to recognize and to do that with other persons, right? So that is important. You must start with self.
Yeah.
Right? And always remember things that may seem as little to you and not important to you could be important to somebody else.
Yes.
Right? There are lots of time we like to use phrases such as whatever. This sounds like a you problem. Right? And it comes across as though we just dismissing the individual, as though the individual emotion doesn't matter. It's not important, right? But it is. Right?
Even if it may not seem that way to you, it is. Everything that every other person does is important.
Exactly.
And we have to treat it as such.
Exactly.
Dr. Budram, you look like you were itching to get in on this one.
Yeah, I have really interacted with quite a number of parents expressing some desire to change, but not knowing how, you know? And some of the things that I tell them is that, first of all, yes, we need to be aware, but how do we reach there?
Yeah.
There is this word that I use that I find we're not using often enough, which is reflection. You're reflecting while you are interacting with that other person. What am I saying? How is what I'm saying affecting the person that I love, the child that I love, my spouse, you know? And then, so you're reflecting in the moment, but you also reflect on the moment. So after an interaction is finished, you know, at the end of the day, or maybe you're driving home, you think about those interactions and you try to figure out, is this the response that I wanted? Is there another response that I could have made? What could I have done differently? And if I did this differently, what would have been the result? And it's a skill, yes, that we have to learn, but by putting those steps in our process together and in practice, soon we're going to develop those skills of being very much aware of how we interact with one another and the response and triggers that we have as well, how it affects people around us. But we're also very much aware that there may be something else that we can do. And, you know, if your reflection is such that maybe I should not have had this outburst, then apologize, you know, because that's a learning moment for you too, to understand and give that person the opportunity to tell you, this is how you made me feel.
Yes.
You know?
It's going to be harsh to hear, but you need to hear it.
Yes. And in hearing it, you can understand how your outward behavior can impact on someone. And we're talking about family. These are the people that we love. And so some level of forgiveness, you know, when a parent comes to you as a child or a child comes to you and apologize, forgiveness is important. Sometimes as well, I like to tell parents, we need to have a sounding board. We need to have someone that we talk to. I do know someone who calls me and says, listen, this is what happened. Did I handle this the right way? And it's not for me to judge because it's your situation that you are in. But then we go through those steps. You know, how did this make you feel? How did this make the other person feel? What could you have done differently? And what would have been the change?
I actually do that. I do have a sounding board, and I do call on that sounding board, and he does give good advice with respect to it. And it's like, you know, you're right. I still think I could have done that, but you're right on those other points. And you have to be able to accept what people tell you as well, you know, listen to what they say. And as we're talking about that, how does building self-esteem and self-worth, as we're talking about emotional intelligence, how does that benefit in children, building the self-esteem and self-worth? How does that benefit the family? Because this is what we're talking about, the family.
Yes. And a family is a unit that is made up, I always say, of different people or subsystems. And so whatever happens to one, it's like an organ in our body. Whatever happens to one impacts on the body, the family. And so therefore it's very important for us to develop self-esteem and self-awareness in children, because it helps to build a healthy family, a family that is resilient and very aware of the emotions of other persons. If you build self-esteem in children, they are able to communicate more, because there is a reduction in the fear of saying something and having an outburst or being treated unfairly. And so when that situation or environment is one where we foster healthy self-esteem, then what happens is the family is able now to understand what are the needs of each member, and then how can we work together as an organ, as a body, to be able to help meet those needs.
And which segues into my other question.
Yes.
What sort of effective strategies can we use to help children manage their emotions in difficult situations? As well.
Yes, well, first of all, we want to recognize and we want to help children to communicate their emotion, how they are feeling, teach them feeling words, right? That's the first thing. Number two, we want them to know that it's okay. Their feelings matter, right? We want them to know that it is okay for you to feel this way, right? And then we want to communicate to them healthy ways in which we can express, right, those emotions. So we have things like journaling that could help some children. For others, just getting involved in activities, outdoor activities, to get some of those emotions out. Now, it's very dangerous for a parent to restrict or to let the child feel that they cannot express their emotion. That leads to a lot of mental health and health issues, right? So we have depression and anxiety coming out of that. And on the health issue part, we have diabetes, we have heart issues, all of that coming out. So it's important to allow the child to get it out, right? So healthy ways of expressing the emotions are very important, right? Remember, you are modeling to the child, right? Sometimes in creating that environment, as a parent, what can be done is just sitting and allowing the child to express how or to talk about their feelings. Talking is an effective way of getting things out, and it helps a lot in the healing process, right? So you're creating that environment for the child to do that. Right? And in the family also, what can be done is that we want to teach children to respect the way in which other persons in the family express their emotions. Because somebody else might not be able to express it the way the other individuals can. That doesn't mean that it's wrong. It's just their way of expressing their emotions.
And of course, that is also related to self-worth and self-esteem.
Absolutely.
Yes. Ooh, we've got more coming your way. We take a short break and we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Are you on board yet? Don't line up. Sign up and enjoy the convenience of the direct deposit system from the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. Yes, convenience is at your fingertips when you sign up to receive your disability assistance and public assistance grants and senior citizens pension directly from your bank account. No need to worry. Your money is safe and free from fraud and theft. So avoid lining up and try signing up. Log on to www.social.gov.tt or visit your local board office for more details and sign up today. Remember, direct deposit. It's fast, it's easy, and it's safe. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. Helping, empowering, transforming lives.
The National Family Services Division of the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services extends its support and commitment to individuals, families, and households. These support services include counseling and psychosocial support, workshops and webinars, and sensitization sessions under the parenting unit, support to grandparents raising their grandchildren under the grandparenting program. Support is offered anonymously and free of charge. For more information, please call the National Family Services Division at 623-2608, extension 6701 to 6711. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. Helping, empowering, transforming lives.
I think it's really important because some people, you know, they can't really survive without understanding the outlook of someone else's position in life, you know. Sometimes people kind of mix up that and not really give them the benefit of the doubt to help them boost their ego, because some people, in the long run, kind of damage them severely mentally, because subconsciously, after being denied or being looked over or after a while, subconsciously something, you know, might crack in you, and then it'd be terrible. So it's very important to, you know, at least give them some form of attention or boost their ego in some way.
Do you think the older
It's very important to boost young people's self-esteem and self-worth, especially when they're younger. That is leaving impact on their memory, you know, especially in adolescent stages. That's where you're growing up. So the things that you experience then stay with you for life, even if you don't realize it, consciously or subconsciously. You go back to that in your mind when you think about your self-worth and things like that.
I'll show them love, tell them that dad loves them, and try to encourage them to do the best. Go to church, do their schoolwork, and try to encourage them to do the best.
Pray with them, talk to them, show them love, give them lots of love. How important.
And those are some very good points. And again, you heard where love, communication is at top of the list. Welcome back to It's Family Time, Let's Talk. Don't forget that you can send in your questions via our TTT Live online Facebook page. And you can also call us at 622-4010. And we are talking emotional intelligence, self-worth, and self-esteem. But one important thing, as you know, they're talking about boosting egos and showing love and communication. That's all well and good. Yes, we need to do those things. But how can parents actually recognize in the first place high or low self-esteem in children, so that they know that I need to boost this child a little bit. I need to help this child along a little bit. Or maybe it's a little too high. So how can parents recognize that?
I think first of all, you need to know your child. You know, sometimes we confuse high self-esteem with being an extrovert, you know, and we need to understand if our child has an extroverted personality, if they're an introvert, because sometimes we think a child may not necessarily have high self-esteem when they're really an introvert. But there are some flags, some red flags that we look for. We look at the child's ability to make decisions or to voice or articulate an opinion. That way, we would understand whether the child feels comfortable in the environment or feel as though they are confident enough to raise an important feeling or opinion. You know, sometimes you would ask a child, what would you like to eat today? And they'd say, I don't know. Or they may be fearful of saying something because they're not necessarily sure if this will please you. You know, so I like to tell parents, first of all, give the child an opportunity to voice, to make decisions. So the other thing we look at is the child's level of confidence in taking measured risks. Now, sometimes we say risk is a bad thing, right? If we engage in risky behavior that may cause trouble, it can be. But as a child is growing up, we expect that they will take a certain amount of risk, whether it is to speak in public or do something in the classroom or engage in a sport. If you feel that your child is not able to feel confident in their ability to do something, then that's another red flag that we would look at. And the third thing I like to look at is a child's ability to develop healthy relationships, because that is a good indication as to the level of self-esteem and self-worth of that child. If the child feels as though I'm not capable of being loved, I don't feel that these children would like me, I'm not good enough, then that's really a clear indicator of a low self-esteem or self-esteem that needs some molding. In children and adolescents, the flags or the indicators may be different. As you grow older, a child telling you, I'm ugly, I don't look good, tends to tell you, that is a reflection of how he or she feels about themselves. And so we look for those kinds of red flags, whether the child is isolated and is not getting involved in activities may also be an indicator for us.
And you know, as you even talk about getting involved in activities, we have to also look at this partnering with everybody's on some mobile device, the iPad or the tablet or their phones, and you know, they gravitate towards those things instead of actually going out. So I think it's all those factors too that you need to take into consideration when you're looking at your child to try to figure out high or low self-esteem, and basically how do I work with this child and what do I do with this child. We do have a Facebook question though, and it says, if a family consists of toxic adults, what can be done in order for children to recognize their worth? And that's one of the questions I think, I know Dr. Boudram will answer that, but it was also one of the questions I was, you know, addressing to Ms. Ovida Franklin when I was talking about individuals not really aware of how they behave and not recognizing toxic behavior and habits in a sense, to be able to teach the children, you know, proper emotional intelligence, to build their self-esteem and self-worth. So who wants to take that one?
I can. Fortunately, the child lives within an environment, and the parents may only be two members of that environment. Sometimes we think building self-esteem and self-worth in children is only the responsibility of parents. And yes, it is parents are a main contributor, but engaging the child in activities where the child feels more confident helps to boost that child's self-esteem, and that child being a part of a team also develops their self-worth, their value. You know, I've had an experience with a young boy who's about 13 or 14 years old, and you could see he had issues around self-esteem and issues around co-parenting and the divorce and so on. But when he started to become a member of a team and he realized that athletics was his thing, he started to show confidence in other areas around him, his schoolwork, his relationship with his friends, his ability to even interact with those parents that were sometimes going through their own challenges. So I like to say, you know, maybe the parents are toxic. We're not going to say we are eliminating them from the support, because they also need work as well. You know, toxic parents are the product of something. They don't just become toxic overnight.
Yes.
And so they too may require that love and support to get through that. But in the meantime, you know, you can also expose the children or the child to other aspects of their environment that would help to boost their level of self-worth.
And as you mentioned that, and you know, communication is one of the things that people are saying. Communication, saying that you love your children, showing that you love your children. What role, because it is a big role, what role does effective communication, I know you mentioned it earlier, does effective communication play in developing that child's emotional intelligence? Communication, it's such a big thing.
You see, with communication, you're able to tell other persons what your needs are, what is affecting you, what resources I need to meet my needs. If we fail on that in itself in communication, if we fail on that, then I wouldn't know how to meet your needs. I wouldn't know what your needs are if you don't tell me, right? So right there and then we have a challenge, right? So it first starts with us being able to communicate what our needs are. Some children might be fearful of communicating their needs to the adults in the household because of situation and experience that would have happened, right? So they grew up in that environment where communicating my needs as a child always has a negative connotation attached to it. So as they grow into adults, their challenge now is to how do I communicate my needs, let person know what I need and what resources I need to meet my needs, or to point me in the direction of the resources. So one of the things is that some persons, one of the resources that they may need is to seek external help from professionals, right? But if you don't know that, then we are in this difficult position. And I know the person asked about the toxic environment. some parents live in an environment and to them it is not deemed as toxic. It is just deemed as a way of life.
That's how I live. This is me.
Right?
This is what I know.
Yes. But until you are able to see that, listen, this is affecting me and it's also affecting the children. So we need to do something about it. Until you get to that place, it's always going to be a challenge. You're going to remain in that toxic environment. And then you're going to raise children in an environment that they also are going to think it's normal. It's a way of living.
And this comes back to the question that we were discussing before the program even started. How do we have those parents, those individuals realize that they are in a toxic environment? Because this is their life. This is what they're living. This is what they're accustomed to. They don't see it as toxic. This is what I do. I'm big and I'm bad. And I'm going to show you that I'm big and I'm bad. And that for them is normal. So how do we explain to the individuals, the parents, that no, that's not what it is? How do we do that?
Yes, and that is a challenge. And I think in situations like that, people may use that toxic expression or behavior as a way of survival. So there are situations where that becomes the way we survive in this particular area, community, family. If we just say, we're not saying to them, stop that, but we're saying to them, maybe there is another way of getting a better result. And I think that's the important message that we need to communicate. As persons, we have to get involved with other people's families. And when I say other people's family, not to mind their business, but you do have friends that may be able to experience this toxicity around children or outburst that may happen. And as a friend, you have a responsibility to speak about it. Not in the moment, because you too might be the one getting some of that outburst, but wait for a time you can engage with the other person to say, I noticed you did this, and I know you were going through something that was difficult. And then you start the conversation around it. Because when people don't recognize it, sometimes we put a lot of blame on them and say, that's who they are. Let's leave them. But if we do that, then we have a society of a lot of angry people going around. Right. Sometimes if you recognize something and you feel the person is not able to respond to you, find that person that they may be able to listen to, or respond to in a better or healthier way, and then try to have that person also accompany you in that discussion. Sometimes it's a spiritual leader, sometimes it's a family friend or an older person, but have that communication. And when we talk about communication, I often feel that we think it's always about talk. Children communicate in different ways. And we have to be able to understand that where a child communicates between the ages of 3 to 5 may be different than a child, let's say, who's 11 to 14. And so sometimes you need to ask the child to draw something. Draw how you're feeling today, Draw how you feel about a particular thing. Or just draw what you want to draw. And then look at that drawing to see whether there are some signs of or themes or things that the child wants to tell you.
Yes.
Children communicate at the earlier ages through play.
Yes.
And so play is important. When we, as social workers, we sometimes say, well, we need to communicate with the child. And then the parents feel a bit overwhelmed. Oh gosh, how am I going to get all of these children together? And what should I say? No, play with them. Bring out a game, a board game, go out into the park. And in that, the child feels more confident, more comfortable, and there will be an outpouring of what has happened and how they feel.
And not only that, you actually learn certain aspects of your child as well.
Yes.
You learn a lot of things about your child. We do actually have a caller from Valencia. Good afternoon, Valencia. How are you? Welcome to
Hello, good day.
Good afternoon.
Hi,
What's
good
your
topic.
question?
We have a culture in Trinidad where we curse our children. So sometimes if they give in trouble, we'll tell them, behave so, or do this so. And I want to know if that's wrong, or how do we change that from, as adults, from doing that all the time, cursing our children while instructing them to do something if they give in trouble.
Yes, thank you so much for that.
Decrease their self-confidence.
Yes.
Thank you for that question, Valencia.
You know,
so true.
That is so true. And as counselors and social workers, sometimes we engage with adults who say, my self-esteem is low because when I was growing up, my mother, my father, or people in the family used to say these things to me. And abuse, the caller used the word cursing, using obscene language. It's something that is a behavior, but you know what? As an adult, we have control over it. And there are times when our emotions can become so high, you know, and so intense that the outpouring of that in words become the curse or the obscenities. Sometimes it's okay if you're in the heat of the moment to say, I need a moment. Let's come back to this. And it's about, as Ovida said, recognizing your triggers, recognizing, you know, sometimes I give parents a thermometer on a piece of paper and they shade it, and they shade the situations that are red and what causes them to be that way. And, you know, I tell them, keep it in your wallet or your handbag and walk around with it. And when you feel those situations that are going to trigger you come up, say, I'm going to step aside for a minute. We will come back to this, you know, John, we'll come back to this, Suzanne, but I need a 5 minutes and it's okay. You do not have to react in the in the emotion because nothing good is going to come out of it.
Yes.
No, that's true.
Being able to manage and control our emotions is so important because we need to teach that also to children. And if we are going to, our reaction is going to be to curse our children every time we get upset, then we're teaching them it's okay to curse.
Do that,
when they are upset also.
Yes, and what it does, it belittles that child. It makes that child feel so small and insignificant that it impacts their self-worth and their self-awareness and their level of self-esteem. So really it is about stepping aside.
Taking a breath.
Taking a deep breath. Maybe listening to some music that is soothing. And come back to it. But you tell the child, we will talk about this, but just not right now.
Calm down and go back to it. And we're coming right back to it right after this break. Stay with us.
Are you on board yet? Don't line up. Sign up and enjoy the convenience of the direct deposit system from the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. Yes, convenience is at your fingertips when you sign up to receive your disability assistance and public assistance grants and senior citizens pension directly from your bank account. No need to worry. Your money is safe and free from fraud and theft. So avoid lining up and try signing up. Log on to www.social.gov.tt or visit your local board office for more details and sign up today. Remember, direct deposit. It's fast, it's easy, and it's safe. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. Helping, empowering, transforming lives.
Communication is very important, you know. You have to talk to them, you have to know what they're thinking, you have to know what's going on. Especially when they're silent, that's the time you have to talk to them more.
Other forms of life, sometimes in your workplace, or sometimes at home, sometimes in your neighborhood, people don't really care too much about that, so they kind of look it over and don't give you that little attention or boost of ego.
I have received that kind of support from home, but I also had to learn it for myself. You know, I had to find myself and also find what supports me and give myself that in tandem. It works both ways. You have to give yourself support and also receive support. It's very important for you.
Communicate with your wife, your kids is good so that they can't go astray. They keep communicating with them every day. Show them love, respect, show them to respect others.
I think it's definitely important. I think gone are the days of do this or that because mommy or daddy say so. You know, sometimes children go through a phase and they say, why? And they say, because I say so. And we just brush it off. I think it's very important to explain it to them. They are much smarter than we think. And instead of us letting them go out there and learn it from somewhere else, that we communicate that with them and we let them know and have very, very, very touchy discussions with them at home before they go and learn that outside. Things like what is good touch and what is bad touch, and all of these things is to communicate with them, let them know what is happening in the world around them so that they don't grow up being too naive. And again, express that love to them all of the time and make sure you have that communication within the family.
It's family time, and we are talking, and it's all about emotional intelligence, self-esteem, worth, and also I've got with me Dr. Ovida Franklin and Dr. Sharolan Boodram with me, and emotional intelligence. Now, we're talking about communication, we're talking about love, we're talking about, you know, having that certain type of relationship with your families. But what are there any recommended resources or activities that can actually help as in the adult, the parent, to enhance our emotional intelligence so that we can better deal and support the child's emotional intelligence? Because that's so important.
Yeah, sure, it is. So we at the National Family Services Division under the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, we do a lot of workshops and community outreaches. And some of those workshops that we have right now are parenting, co-parenting, grandparenting workshops, and these are workshops that we create the opportunity. It's a learning experience, a teaching moment where we teach parents about various type of behaviors and ways in which they can improve on their parenting skills. And emotional intelligence is one such topic that we do facilitate in our sessions. So these are some of the programs that we have on board in order to help parents to improve or to better the skills of their emotional intelligence, right? And we also do a lot of counseling, right? So we have those resources. So we do individual family counseling. We try to facilitate, and all we are doing is creating the environment. We assess your needs, what needs you have right now, what is important to you, and we try our best at the National Family Services to facilitate that, to see how we could meet those needs. So it's always an opportunity for families, parents to reach out to us and be a part or be involved in some of these programs, right? And the information is going to be shared on the going to be shared on the screen.
That's right.
Yes, right? And where you can reach out to us, persons who are struggling, who need to develop this skill, can contact us, and we have the resources that can assist you. Right? You don't have to do it alone, parents. Right?
So while you do have the outreach programs and things like that, people, individuals, parents, they can actually come into you.
Yes.
And access your services, and they're totally free.
Yes.
I always say this, totally free.
Of course.
Right.
We do it, some persons prefer to do it individual, and we respect that, while other persons prefer to do it as a family.
Okay.
Right? So it's a kind of family time where we can get an activity time where persons can come together. Yeah. Maybe they're not in the space where they're allowed to communicate effectively as they should. So we create the space and the environment that allows this to take place.
Lovely. Wow, that's a lot of work, but I really, congratulate you guys for doing this. Dr. Boodram, though, we've just got a few more minutes, but I want you to answer this question for me. What are some of the ways that we can actually nurture healthy development of self-esteem and self-worth in our family members?
In addition to what we've talked about, I think there are some do's and don'ts that I can quickly run by. The first one is, do not compare your child or any other member of the family to someone else. Understand that your child is unique. When you compare with an average child or a child who's excelling differently than your child, it makes that child feel less of a person. What you can do is actually celebrate the uniqueness of your child. I have a friend, very quickly, who I met a long time ago, and she used to tell me, I have big eyes, and when I was growing up before school, my father recognized that children might taunt me for these big eyes. So he would say, hey, you have beautiful big eyes. She said, by the time I reached primary school and the children were taunting me, and they told me I had big eyes, I said, I know, and I celebrated it. So celebrate the uniqueness and differences in your child. Don't compare your child to another person, because your child is unique. Also understand that sometimes our words can be very harsh We live in a society full of jokes, jeers in the family.
Yes.
You know, we always call people in the family different kinds of names, and we expect that, we're building their confidence to handle taking this.
Gosh,
But you're not doing that by calling them names. What you are doing is really diminishing their own sense of value, their worth in themselves, and recognizing the child not as an entire individual, but maybe a feature of their personality.
We have a question. Is it still okay to physically correct your children by licks, as they say, and to change your self-worth? Licks? Spare the rod, spoil the child is what they say.
I don't think giving licks changes a child's self-worth. I think what it does, it kind of attacks the value of the child, where it becomes a moment of punishment as opposed to being a moment of teaching. And so if a child does something wrong, there are other ways that you can discipline a child in a healthy way that develops the child's self-esteem.
Yes.
You use it as a teaching moment as opposed to punishment where the child doesn't understand what they should do differently, why they're being punished, and so on. And sometimes when it goes to licks, we come back to emotional intelligence. We might beat because we are in this heat of the experience and may not necessarily communicate words that are soothing, that is going to build a child's self-regulation.
All right. Well, we've almost come to the end, but I need to get your final thoughts and your final views on this. Ovida Franklin, social worker, counselor. What pieces of advice final pieces of advice you can give us?
Yes, what I would like to say to parents is that emotional intelligence is a skill, and it's not something that is learned within a day. It's learned over time. So be patient with yourself and also be patient with the child. Right? Remember, it's about managing and controlling, how we are able to manage and control our emotions. Right? And then it puts us in a better space where we are able to manage and control the emotions of others. Right? So National Family Services, yes, we are available. You can reach out to us, and our services are free, and you can contact us on our telephone numbers that will be shown on the screen. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And Dr. Sharolan Boodram, final words from you.
I just want to say to the children that are out there today, parents also have self-esteem, and sometimes they lack confidence in their own parenting ability. Give your parents a hug, show them some love, tell them you appreciate them.
I love it. So turn to your child, your children, give them a nice big hug and say, I love you, no matter what's going on right now. That's our show. Let me thank our guests for joining us this afternoon, and you, our viewers at home, and those who sent in those questions and also gave us a call. You can join us next time. I'm Ria Rupchansing, and on behalf of all of us here at TCT, have a great afternoon. See you soon.
National Family Services Division of the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services extends its support and commitment to individuals, families, and households. These support services include counseling and psychosocial support, workshops and webinars, and sensitization sessions under the parenting unit, support to grandparents raising their grandchildren under the grandparenting program. Support is offered anonymously and free of charge. For more information, please call the National Family Services Division at 623-2608, extension 6701 to 6711. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. Helping, empowering, transforming lives.
This is TTT. Live for local.